The phone vibrated on the car seat beside me. Again and again. 23 missed calls now. I stared at his name flashing on the screen as another contraction ripped through me, worse than the last. Outside, snow fell in thick flakes, blanketing the hospital parking lot in white silence. The dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m. You could just go by yourself if it happens. He'd laughed earlier that day, tossing his bags into his parents' waiting car. It's not like you really need me there. The phone buzzed again. This time I picked it up, watching his frantic text. Messages pile up. Asterisk. Where are you? Please answer me. The roads are closed. I'm trying to get back. Please be okay. Asterisk. My thumb hovered over the screen, so easy to respond. To forgive. To fall back into the pattern that had defined our 5 years. Together. Instead, I turned off the phone and slid it into my pocket. With one hand on my swollen belly and the other gripping my hastily packed overnight bag, I pushed open the car door and stepped into the snow alone. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. 3 months earlier, I sat in Dr. Patel's office, clutching Matthew's hand as she pointed to the grainy ultrasound image. Congratulations, she said, her smile warm. You're having a girl. Matthew's grip tightened around my fingers. In the dim light of the examination room, I could see tears shimmering in his eyes. This was what we had wanted for so long. Nearly. 3 years of disappointments, 1 miscarriage, countless nights spent crying in each other's arms. It's a girl, he whispered, his voice cracking. Emma, we're having a daughter. I pressed my free hand against my rounded belly, still small enough to hide under loose clothing, but undeniably there. Our miracle. Our second chance. We hadn't told anyone yet, not my best friend Live, not his parents, not even my sister Jenna. The pain of our previous loss had taught us caution. But now, with the second trimester safely begun and a healthy heartbeat confirmed, we finally had something to celebrate. I think it's time to tell people, I said as we walked to the car. The June sun warm on our faces. Starting with your parents this weekend. Matthew nodded, pulling me close as we walked. Mom's been asking for months why we never visit anymore. I guess we can finally tell her why we've been so busy. His parents lived 3 hours north in Lakeside, a small resort town where Matthew had grown up helping at their bed and breakfast. Eleanor and Richard Kane were kind people, if a bit old-fashioned. They had never quite understood why I'd chosen to keep working after marriage or why we'd waited so long to start a family. She'd be thrilled, I said. They both will. Matthew smiled, that crooked half-smile that had first made me fall for him in graduate school. They might never let us leave once they know they're finally getting a grandchild. I laughed, not knowing then how prophetic those words would become. That weekend with Matthew's parents went exactly as expected. Eleanor cried, Richard broke out a bottle of expensive scotch he'd been saving. And both of them immediately began planning the nursery they insisted on creating in their own home. For when you visit, Eleanor explained, though the gleam in her eye suggested she was already imagining much longer stays. It should have been a warning sign, the way they spoke about our child as if she partly belonged to them. But I was too. Caught up in the joy of finally sharing our news to notice how Matthew deferred to every suggestion his mother made. How quickly he agreed when they proposed we spend the holidays with them that year. You can't be traveling in your condition during Christmas, Eleanor insisted, patting my hand. You'll stay here where we can take care of you. By Sunday night, as we packed to return home, Eleanor had already ordered a crib and changing table for delivery, and Richard had cleared out his old office for the nursery. They're just excited, Matthew said when I mentioned how quickly they'd taken over. It's their first grandchild. Let them enjoy this. I nodded, pushing down the slight unease. These were normal grandparent reactions, I told myself. And after years of longing, wasn't I grateful for a family that welcomed our child so enthusiastically? What I didn't realize then was that I had just witnessed the first gentle tug of the rope. That would eventually pull Matthew away from me. As summer turned to fall, my body changed dramatically. The slight bump became an unmistakable belly, and with it came a new sense of vulnerability I hadn't expected. Matthew noticed it too, his protective instincts kicking into overdrive. Maybe. You should cut back your hours, he suggested one night as I massaged my swollen feet after a long day at the architecture firm. Johnson would understand. I shook my head. I've got the Riverside project to finish. After that's done in November, I'll start my leave. Mom thinks you're pushing yourself too hard, he said, not meeting my eyes. Something cold settled in my chest. You've been talking to your mother about my work schedule? Matthew shrugged, defensive. She asks how you're doing. What am I supposed to do? Not answer? You could tell her I'm doing fine, managing my own pregnancy, I said, trying to keep my voice even, because I am. The argument that followed wasn't our first about his parents' involvement. But it was the first time I noticed a pattern forming. More and more, Matthew cited his mother's opinions on everything, from which prenatal vitamins I should take to how I should be sleeping. Eleanor called daily now, and Matthew never failed to answer, stepping out of rooms to speak with her in hushed tones. When I confronted him about it, he accused me of being hormonal and jealous of his close relationship with his parents. They're just trying to help, he insisted. Help or control? I asked, his expression hardened. You know what your problem is, Emma? You've never understood what it means to be part of a real family. Not everyone had parents who split up when they were kids. The words hit me hard. My parents' bitter divorce when I was 12 had left scars. I thought Matthew understood. That he would use it against me now revealed a cruelty I hadn't known he possessed. I didn't speak to him for 2 days after that. When we finally made up, it was a fragile peace built on things left unsaid rather than truly resolved. Liv noticed the change in me during our weekly coffee meet. You seem off, she said, studying my face over the rim of her cup. Is it just pregnancy stuff, or is something else going on? I considered brushing it off, but Liv had been my friend since college. She could read me too well. It's Matthew, I admitted. Ever since we told his parents about the baby, he's different. It's like they have some kind of hold over him. Liv frowned. Different how? He calls them every day. His mom is constantly sending baby things and parenting books. And Matthew just goes along with it all. Last week they showed up unannounced with furniture for the nursery because Eleanor didn't like what we'd picked out. And Matthew said he helped them bring it in. I said, the frustration bubbling up again. He said I should be grateful they care so much. Liv reached across the table to squeeze my hand. That's not normal, Emma. Not even for grandparents. I know, I whispered. And the worst part is, when I try to talk to him about it, he gets defensive, says I don't understand. Because of my broken family background, Liv's eyes widened. He actually said that. I nodded, tears threatening. I don't recognize him sometimes. Liv. It's like he becomes a different person when they're around or when they call. Like he's 16 again, not 34. That's not fair to you, Liv said firmly. And it's not good for your baby either. You two need to be a united front. I know, I said. Just don't know how to get through to him. What neither of us realized then was that the distance between Matthew and me had already grown wider than words could bridge. We were heading for a breaking point, and it would come much sooner than I could have imagined. November brought an early, cold snap and the completion of the Riverside project. As promised, I started my maternity leave, planning to use the time to finish preparing for our daughter's arrival in January. Eleanor and Richard began visiting every other weekend, each time staying longer than the last. During one of these visits, just after Thanksgiving, Eleanor brought up Christmas. We've been thinking, she said, over dinner. With Emma so close to her due date, maybe you should both come up to Lakeside earlier than planned. Perhaps mid-December. To be safe, I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. Mid-December. That's nearly 3 weeks before my due date. Better safe than sorry, Richard chimed in. The weather can get bad, and the last thing you want is to be stuck here if you go into labor early. I have regular appointments with Dr. Patel, I pointed out, and we've already arranged for delivery at St. Mary's. Eleanor waved a dismissive hand. Dr. Wan in Lakeside is excellent. I've already spoken to him, and he's happy to take you on as a patient for the delivery. The room seemed to tilt slightly. She spoke to a doctor about me without asking me first? I looked to Matthew, expecting him to back me up, to explain to his parents why this crossed a line. Instead, he was nodding thoughtfully. It's not a bad idea, he said. The weather has been unpredictable lately. Matthew, I said quietly, can we talk about this privately? In the kitchen, I struggled to keep my voice down. How can you not see what they're doing? They're trying to take over our baby's birth now. They're trying to help, Matthew insisted. Mom's right. What if there's a snowstorm when you go into labor? What if we can't get to the hospital in time? That's why we chose a hospital 10 minutes from our house, I reminded him. Dr. Patel knows my medical history. Not switching. Doctors at 8 months pregnant because your mother decided to play medical coordinator. Matthew ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. You're being stubborn for no reason. This isn't about control. It's about what's safest for the baby. Our baby, I emphasized. Our decision, not your parents. The argument ended in a stalemate, but I could tell by Matthew's expression that the discussion wasn't over. Sure enough, over the next 2 weeks, he brought it up repeatedly, each time with a new reason why delivering in Lakeside made more sense. The hospital there has a better NICU, he claimed one evening. St. Mary's NICU is top-rated, I countered. I researched it extensively. Mom says Dr. Wan delivered over 1,000 babies without a single complication. That's statistically impossible, I pointed out. The pressure continued until mid-December arrived with no resolution. Matthew grew increasingly distant, spending more time on the phone with his parents and less time talking to me. The nursery stood ready, but instead of feeling excited, I felt a creeping dread. Something was coming apart between us, and I didn't know how to fix it. The snowfall began on December 20th, 5 days before Christmas. By evening, 4 inches covered the ground, with more predicted overnight. Matthew watched the weather report with growing concern. Mom called, he said after hanging up the phone. The roads to Lakeside are still clear, but they might not be by tomorrow. I continued folding baby clothes, saying nothing. Emma, Matthew said, his voice taking on that patient tone I'd come to resent. Be reasonable. If we leave tonight, we can be at my parents' before the worst of the storm hits. I placed a tiny onesie on the pile. I'm not going, Matthew. Don't be ridiculous, he snapped. You're due in 3 weeks. What if you go into labor during the storm? Then we'll drive to St. Mary's, just like we planned. The living room. I don't understand why you're being so stubborn about this. My parents have gone out of their way to prepare for us. Mom's been cooking all week. I finally looked up at him. I'm not going to Lakeside to have this baby. I'm staying here with my doctor and my hospital. If you want to go see your parents for Christmas, go ahead. I didn't really mean it. I never thought he'd actually go without me, not with my due date so close. But something had changed in Matthew over the past months. Something I was only beginning to understand. Fine, he said, his voice cold. That's how you want it. He stormed out of the room, and I heard him on the phone again, his voice low and urgent. When he returned 20 minutes later, his expression was set in lines of determination. My parents are driving down tomorrow to get me, he announced. I'll spend Christmas with them and be back before New Year's. Maybe by then you'll have gotten over whatever this is? I stared at him, disbelief and hurt warring inside me. You're actually going to leave me here alone when I could go into labor any day. You're the one who chose to stay, he said defensively. And anyway, you said yourself you're not due for 3 weeks. First babies are usually late. Matthew, I said, my voice breaking. Please don't do this. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, Reckitt, perhaps, or uncertainty. Then his phone buzzed with a text, and whatever momentary connection we'd had was lost. "I'll be back before anything happens," he said firmly. "And Liv is nearby if you need anything." That night we slept with a wall of silence between us. In the morning, I watched from the window as he packed his bags into his parents' car. Before getting in, he came back inside, his expression softer. "It's not too late," he said. "Come with us." I shook my head, tears threatening. "I can't believe you're doing this." His face hardened again. "You're the one being difficult, Emma, not me." As he turned to leave, he paused at the door. "Call me if anything happens," he said. Then, with a forced laugh that would echo in my mind for days to come, "You could just go by yourself if it happens. It's not like you need me there." The door closed behind him, and I watched through a blur of tears as the car pulled away, carrying my husband toward his parents' waiting arms and away from me at the moment I needed him most. I didn't know then that those callous words would be the last I'd hear from him in person for a very long time. The first day alone felt like freedom. I moved through our house without Matthew's worried, hovering, or his parents' opinions filling every space. I played music Eleanor had deemed too stimulating for the baby. I ordered spicy Thai food Matthew had forbidden during pregnancy. But by evening, the novelty had worn off, replaced by a hollow feeling I didn't want to examine too closely. I called Liv, who immediately offered to come over. "Absolutely not," I told her when she suggested driving through the worsening snow. "I'm fine, really, just bored." "He's an idiot," Liv declared. "Leaving you alone now of all times," he says. "He'll be back by New Year's," I said, not adding that I was beginning to doubt it. Eleanor would find reasons to keep him there. She always did. "Well, I'm checking on you every day until he gets back," Liv insisted. "And I'm coming over for Christmas." No arguments. After hanging up, I wandered into the nursery. The crib stood ready, surrounded by shelves of baby books and stuffed animals. On the changing table, stacks of tiny clothes waited for their owner. I ran my fingers over a soft yellow blanket my sister had sent from Seattle. "It's just you and me for now, little one," I whispered, resting my hands on my belly. As if in response, I felt a strong kick against my palm. That night, I dreamed of hospital corridors and locked doors, of calling for Matthew and hearing only Eleanor's voice answer. I woke with a start at 3 a.m., my nightgown damp with sweat despite the winter chill. Something felt different. Not pain exactly, but a tightening across my abdomen that came and went. I timed it, 15 minutes apart. Too erratic to be labor. I told myself, probably just Braxton Hicks contractions. Still, unease kept me awake until dawn. When the tightening hadn't stopped by morning, I called Dr. Patel's office. "It's probably nothing to worry about," the nurse assured me after hearing my symptoms. "But given you're home alone, why don't you come in for a quick check?" The roads were slick but passable as I drove myself to the clinic. Dr. Patel examined me with careful hands, her face betraying no concern. "Your cervix is still closed," she said finally. "No signs of imminent labor. But these contractions are worth monitoring. They could be early labor or just your body practicing. So I shouldn't worry," I asked. "I'd prefer you weren't alone right now," she admitted. "Is there someone who can stay with you for a few days?" I thought of Liv, who would come in a heartbeat but was leaving tomorrow to visit her parents in Chicago. My sister Jenna was across the country. The few other friends I might have called were all traveling for the holidays. "My husband will be back soon," I lied. Dr. Patel looked skeptical but nodded. "Keep timing the contractions. They get closer together or more intense, or if you notice any fluid leaking, come straight to the hospital." On the drive home, snow began falling again, thick flakes that reduced visibility to just a few yards ahead. My phone rang through the car speakers. Matthew, calling for his daily check-in. "How are you feeling?" he asked when I answered. I could hear the sounds of Christmas music and laughter in the background. "Fine," I said, not mentioning the contractions or my doctor's visit. Sounds like you're having fun. Mom made her famous gingerbread. Dad's got a fire going. His voice brightened. They invited the Thompsons over. Remember Mike from high school? He's here with his wife and kids. That's nice, I said flatly. A pause. You sure you're okay? You sound tired. For a moment, I considered telling him everything. How scared I was. How the contractions had kept me up all night. How the doctor had said I shouldn't be alone. But pride stopped me. He had made his choice. Just didn't sleep well. I said instead. The baby was active. Mom says that means she'll be athletic, Matthew said, his voice lightening. Oh, before I forget, we're thinking of driving up to the lake house tomorrow. Cell reception is spotty there, so don't worry if you can't reach me for a day or so. The lake house 3 hours further from home than his parents' place already was. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Is that really a good idea? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. What if I need to reach you? You'll be fine, he said dismissively. And anyway, we won't be gone long. It's just overnight. I ended the call soon after, a cold numbness spreading through me. He knew I was alone. He knew I was nearly 9 months pregnant. And still he was going farther away, to a place where I couldn't even call if something went wrong. By the time I reached home, the snow was falling so heavily that I could barely see our front door from the driveway. Inside, I changed into dry clothes and curled up on the couch, trying to ignore the contractions that now seemed to be coming every 12 minutes. Just Braxton Hicks, I told myself firmly. Asterisk, not the real thing. Not yet. Asterisk, but as darkness fell, and the storm intensified, a new thought began to take shape in my mind. One born of hurt and anger, and a growing realization that the man I had married was not the man who had left me 5 days ago. If these contractions did turn into labor, would I even tell him? Christmas brought no respite from the snow or the contractions. They remained sporadic, sometimes fading entirely for an hour. Sometimes coming as close as 10 minutes apart, but never progressing into a clear pattern. I tried to distract myself by watching holiday movies and finishing the last touches on The Nursery. Matthew called in the afternoon, his voice echoing strangely. We're at the lake house, he explained. Reception is terrible, but I wanted to check in before it gets worse. How long are you staying? I asked, ignoring the contraction currently tightening across my belly. We're heading back to Mom and Dad's tomorrow afternoon. The Hendersons are coming for Christmas dinner. If you remember Mr. Henderson, my dad's old business partner? His granddaughter just got engaged, so Mom's planning a little celebration. Each casual mention of holiday plans felt like a deliberate reminder of what I was missing and what Matthew had chosen over me. Sounds fun, I said listlessly. Hey, Ma? Matthew said, his voice suddenly serious. You'd tell me if something was wrong, right? If you needed me to come home. The question caught me off guard. For a moment, I almost confessed everything. The contractions. The doctor's visit. The growing fear that our daughter might arrive before he returned. But then I remembered his laughing words as he left. You could just go by yourself if it happens. Everything's fine, I said. Enjoy the lake house. After hanging up, I made my way to the bathroom, where a pinkish tinge in the toilet made my heart skip. Bloody show. One of the signs Dr. Patel had told me to watch for. Early labor could last for days, I reminded myself. There was still time. I called Liv, who answered on the first ring. What's wrong? She asked immediately. Nothing. I said, well, maybe something. I think I might be in early labor. Liv's sharp intake of breath came through clearly. I'm coming over. You're supposed to leave for Chicago tomorrow morning. I protested. Screw Chicago. My best friend needs me. No, I said firmly. Your parents are expecting you. I'm fine. Really, the contractions aren't close together yet. It could still be days before anything happens. After 20 minutes of argument, we compromised. Liv would come check on me in the morning before her flight, If things seemed to be progressing, she'd stay. If not, she'd go to Chicago as planned. And you'll call Matthew, she pressed. If it turns into actual labor? Yes, I said, the lie coming easier than expected. That night, as snow continued to fall and the contractions gradually intensified, I found myself repeatedly picking up my phone, then putting it down without calling. Part of me, the rational adult part, knew I should tell Matthew what was happening. That, despite everything, he deserved to know his child might be coming. But another part, the part nursing a deep wound of betrayal, couldn't bring myself to give him what he didn't deserve. It's a chance to swoop in at the last minute and pretend he hadn't abandoned us when we needed him most. By midnight, the contractions were 8 minutes apart and strong enough that I couldn't talk through them. Still, I hesitated. Not yet, I told myself. Not until I'm sure. I dozed fitfully between contractions, waking each time to grip the edge of the couch and breathe through the pain. At 3:17 a.m. Christmas morning, a particularly strong one made me gasp aloud. As it faded, I felt a warm gush between my legs. My water had broken. This was real labor, and there was no more denying it. Outside, the snow had piled nearly a foot deep, with more falling steadily. The contractions were coming every 6 minutes now. I needed to get to the hospital soon. With shaking hands, I picked up my phone live first. She was closer. "I'm on my way," she said after I explained the situation. "Don't move. Don't try to drive yourself. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Next, I hovered over Matthew's name. One tap, and he would know. One tap, and he could start the long drive back, possibly arriving in time for the birth of his daughter. Instead, I set the phone down and went to get my hospital bag. Some choices, once made, set us on paths we never expected to travel. In choosing his parents over his wife and unborn child, Matthew had made his. Now I was making mine. Liv arrived. In record time, her car fishtailing slightly as she pulled into my driveway. One look at my face told her everything she needed to know. "Hospital now," she said, grabbing my bag with one hand and supporting me with the other. The contractions were 5 minutes apart by the time we made it to her car. Each one felt like a vice tightening around my midsection, stealing my breath. And focus between them, clarity returned, along with doubt. "Should call Matthew," I said, as Liv carefully navigated the snow-covered streets. "Yes, you should," she agreed, eyes fixed on the road. "But let's get you to the hospital first." St. Mary's emergency entrance was blessedly warm after the bitter cold outside. A nurse took one look at me, doubled over with a contraction, and immediately called for a wheelchair. "How far apart?" she asked briskly as she wheeled me toward labor and delivery. For minutes now, Liv answered for me. Her water broke about 40 minutes ago. Everything moved quickly after that. Dr. Patel was called. An IV was started. Monitors were attached to track the baby's heartbeat and my contractions. Through it all, my phone remained in my purse, untouched. 4 centimeters dilated, the nurse announced after checking me. "You're doing great, first baby?" another nurse asked as she adjusted the fetal monitor. I nodded, gritting my teeth through another contraction. "Where's Dad?" she asked cheerfully. "Getting coffee," Liv said. The question hit like a slap. Before I could answer, Liv stepped in. "He's not in the picture right now," she said firmly. "I'm her person." The nurse's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Well, you're in good hands here." As the hours passed and labor intensified, I lost track of time. The contractions blended together, waves of pain that seemed to have no beginning and no end. Dr. Patel arrived sometime around dawn, her calm presence a steady anchor. "You're progressing beautifully," she assured me after an examination. 6 centimeters now. In a moment of clarity between contractions, I glanced at the clock on the wall. 9:17 a.m. Christmas morning. Matthew would be waking up at the lake, house opening presents with his parents, completely unaware that his daughter was about to enter the world. The thought brought a fresh wave of anger that had nothing to do with the physical pain. How could he have left us? How could he have chosen his parents over his own family? Do you want me to call him? Liv asked softly, following my gaze to the clock. I shook my head. No, I said with sudden certainty. No, I don't. Labor stretched. On through the morning. At some point, I heard my phone ringing from my purse once, twice, 3 times. Matthew's daily check-in calls, I realized distantly. Let him worry, a small vindictive part of me thought. 8 centimeters, Dr. Patel announced around noon. You're in transition now. The hardest part, but also the shortest. She wasn't wrong. The contractions came faster and stronger, leaving barely any recovery time between them. I lost the ability to speak, to think, to do anything except endure. Liv never left my side, offering ice chips, wiping my forehead, encouraging me through each wave of pain, in the moments of lucidity between contractions. I found myself thinking that this was what true family meant, not blood or obligation, but choosing to be there when it mattered most. At 2:41 p.m. on Christmas Day, with one final tremendous push, my daughter entered the world with a cry that filled the delivery room. She's perfect, Dr. Patel said, placing the squirming, red-faced infant on my chest. Congratulations, Emma! Through tears, I looked down at my daughter's tiny face, her eyes squeezed shut against the bright hospital lights, her little fists clenched as if ready to fight the world. In that moment, all the pain, both physical and emotional, seemed to fade, replaced by a love so fierce it took my breath away. Hello, Lily, I whispered, the name we had chosen months ago suddenly feeling exactly right. I'm your mom. Lily's eyes blinked open, dark blue and unfocused, but seeming to stare directly into mine. A connection formed, immediate and unbreakable. In that moment, I knew I would do anything to protect this tiny person, including protecting her from those who had already proven they couldn't be trusted. An hour later, cleaned up and settled in a recovery room with Lily sleeping peacefully. In a bassinet beside me, I finally asked Liv for my phone. 27 missed calls from Matthew. 53 text messages, growing increasingly frantic as the day wore on. The latest had come just 10 minutes earlier. Emma, please answer. Me. I'm worried sick. The roads are awful, but we're trying to get home. Please just let me know you're okay. I stared at the screen, at the desperation evident in his words, and felt nothing but a cold calm. He'd made his choice 5 days ago. Now I was making mine. With steady fingers, I typed a response. Lily Catherine Wright was born at 2:41 p.m., 7 pounds. We're both fine. I pressed send. Then turned off the phone and placed it on the bedside table. Some bridges once burned should stay ashes. The hospital kept us for 2 days. Standard procedure for a first-time mother with an uncomplicated delivery. During that time, my phone remained off, sealed in the drawer of my bedside table like a toxic substance I couldn't bring myself to touch. Liv stayed with me whenever hospital rules allowed, bringing changes of clothes and updating my sister Jenna, who immediately booked a flight from Seattle. When she wasn't there, I focused entirely on Lily, learning to nurse, to change diapers, to interpret her different cries. The nurses taught me how to swaddle, how to bathe her tiny body, how to care for my own still recovering one. No one asked about Lily's father again after the first day. But a well-meaning nurse had inquired if he'd be visiting, and Liv had taken her aside for a quiet conversation. After that, the staff treated me with a gentle sympathy that might have bothered me if I'd had the energy to care. On the afternoon of December 27th, Dr. Patel signed our discharge papers. You're both doing wonderfully, she said, giving my hand a squeeze. But remember, no driving for at least a week, preferably 2. Do you have someone to take you home? I do, I confirmed. Liv was waiting outside with her car already warmed up, the infant seat we'd installed months ago, ready for its first passenger. As we prepared to leave, a nurse I hadn't seen before appeared in the doorway, her expression uncertain. "Mrs. Wright, there's a situation at the front desk. Your husband is here. He's demanding to see you and the baby." My heart stuttered. I'd known this moment would come eventually, but I'd hoped for more time to recover, to think, to decide. Exactly what I wanted to say to Matthew when I finally saw him again. "Tell him we've already been discharged," I said after a moment. "Tell him we're gone." The nurse hesitated. "Seems very upset. He says he's been trying to reach you for days." "Steez?" I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I can't see him." "Right now," she nodded, sympathy in her eyes. "I'll handle it. There's a service elevator we can use to get you out without going through the main lobby." 20 minutes later, Liv drove us carefully through the still snowy streets, Lily sleeping peacefully in her car seat. In the side mirror, I caught a glimpse of the hospital entrance where a figure that looked like Matthew stood, talking animatedly with a security guard. "He'll come to the house," I said quietly. "Do you want to go somewhere else?" Liv asked. "You could stay with me for a few days." I considered it, then shook my head. "No, I need to face this at some point. Might as well be now." But when we arrived home, there was no sign of Matthew's car in the driveway or on the street. Inside, the house was exactly as I'd left it 3 days earlier, though colder, the thermostat having been turned down to save energy. "Let me get the heat up before you take your coat off," Liv said, hurrying to adjust the temperature. "I'll bring your bags in." I carried Lily, still bundled in her hospital blanket, into the nursery. The room felt strange now, familiar but somehow distant, like a photograph of a place rather than the place itself. I decorated it with such hope, such plans for the future. Now, those plans had changed irrevocably. "Welcome home," I whispered to Lily as I gently placed her in the crib for the first time. She squirmed, her tiny features scrunching momentarily before relaxing back into sleep. The doorbell rang, making me freeze. Liv appeared in the nursery doorway, her expression concerned. "It's not him," she said quickly. "It's your elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson. She's holding what looks like a casserole dish." Relief washed over me, followed by a wave of exhaustion so profound my knees nearly buckled. "Could you thank her for me? I need to lie down." I made it to my bedroom just as the tears I'd been holding back for days finally broke free. Curling on my side on the bed that seemed too big without Matthew beside me, I let them flow for the birth he'd missed, for the marriage that was crumbling, for the future I thought was certain but now hung in question. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew, Lily's hungry cries were pulling me back to consciousness. The bedroom was dark except for the soft glow of the baby monitor on the nightstand. Beside it sat my phone, still powered off. With a sigh, I turned it on. I needed to face reality, no matter how painful. The notifications flooded in immediately. More missed calls from Matthew, text messages, voicemails. I scrolled through them, watching his progression from worry to panic to anger to desperation. Asterisk, where are you? Christmas morning, 9:32 a.m. Why aren't you answering? 10:17 a.m. I'm trying to reach you. The roads are getting worse. 11:45 a.m. Emma, please. I'm scared something's happened to you. 10:03 p.m. We're on our way back. Please be okay. 2:17 p.m. then. My brief message about Lily's birth, followed by, what do you mean? Are you in labor? At the hospital. 3:42 p.m. Emma, please answer me. 3:43 p.m. I'm coming. Please tell me which hospital. It's 3:44 p.m. Asterisk. Dozens more followed, increasingly desperate. The final text had come just 20 minutes ago. Asterisk. I'm at the house. Where are you? Almost simultaneously, headlights swept across the bedroom wall as a car pulled into the driveway. Lily's cries grew more insistent from the nursery. In the hallway, I heard Liv's footsteps moving toward the front door. It was time to face the consequences of the choice I'd made. I reached Lily first, lifting her from the crib as Liv opened the front door. From the entryway came the sound of Matthew's voice, strained and desperate. Where is she? Where's Emma? Lower your voice, Liv replied coldly. The baby's sleeping. Baby? Matthew's voice cracked. So it's true. She had the baby. 2 days ago, Liv confirmed. While you were celebrating Christmas with your parents. I emerged from the nursery with Lily cradled against my shoulder, her cries softening as I gently patted her back. The hallway light illuminated Matthew's face, unshaven, haggard. His eyes red-rimmed from what might have been tears or exhaustion, or both. He froze when he saw us, his gaze fixed on the tiny bundle in my arms. Emma, he whispered. Oh, God. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Matthew took a step forward, his hand outstretched as if to touch the daughter he was seeing for the first time. I stepped back. The motion was instinctive, protective, a mother shielding her child. But the hurt that flashed across Matthew's face made it clear he understood the message behind it. You didn't call me, he said, his voice hollow. You went through labor and didn't call me. You weren't here to call, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I would have been. The words burst from him loud enough to startle Lily, who began to whimper again. I would have come immediately if I'd known. Keep your voice down, I said quietly, rocking Lily gently. And you would have come for the birth, maybe? But you weren't here for everything else. You chose to leave. I was coming back. Always. Said I was coming back after Christmas. I reminded him. After your parents' parties. After the lake house. After everything else that was more important than your pregnant wife alone during a snowstorm. Matthew ran a hand through his disheveled hair. That's not fair. You told me to go. You said you'd be fine. And you believed. Me. You thought leaving your 9 months pregnant wife alone was acceptable because she said she'd be fine. I shook my head, disappointment bitter on my tongue. A good husband wouldn't have left in the first place. Lily began to cry in earnest now, perhaps sensing the tension. I turned away from Matthew, heading back toward the nursery. I need to feed her, Emma, please. Matthew's voice broke. She's my daughter, too. I have a right to see her, to hold. Her, I paused at the nursery door, but didn't turn around. Rights have to be earned, Matthew. And you haven't earned anything these past few days? I closed the door behind me, shutting out his response. As I settled into the rocking chair to nurse Lily, I could hear the low murmur of voices from the living room, Liv and Matthew. Their tones heated, though the words were indistinct. By the time Lily had fed and fallen back asleep, the house was quiet. I emerged cautiously to find Liv alone in the kitchen, making tea. He's gone, she said before I could ask. I convinced him to give you some space tonight. He's staying at a hotel downtown. Relief and an unexpected pang of regret mingled in my chest. What did he say? Liv handed me a steaming mug. A lot of excuses. Mostly the roads were bad. His parents convinced him it wasn't safe to drive back in the storm. He tried calling, but couldn't get through. All things he could have overcome if he'd really wanted to. I noted. That's what I told him. Liv sipped her tea. I also told him that if he wanted any chance of fixing this, he needed to stop defending his choices and start taking responsibility for them. I raised an eyebrow. You said that to him? Someone had to. She shrugged. And since I'm not the one who just pushed a human being out of my body, I figured it should be me. Despite everything, I felt a smile tug at my lips. What would I do without you? Let's never find out. She squeezed my hand. Kay, now I've set you up with bottles in the fridge. I need to run home and pack a bag if I'm going to be your roommate for the next few days. After she left, the house felt too quiet, too empty. I wandered into the living room where the Christmas tree we'd decorated together in early December stood dark and unattended. The gifts beneath it, mostly for the baby, remained unopened. On the mantel, a row of photo frames caught my attention. Our wedding day, our honeymoon in Costa Rica, Matthew's law school graduation, me at the opening of my first major architectural project. Happy moments from a life that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. The last frame held an ultrasound image. Lily, at 20 weeks, her tiny profile clearly visible. Matthew had cried when we first saw it on the screen. "That's our baby," he'd whispered, his voice filled with wonder and love. Where had that Matthew gone? When had his parents' approval become more important than his wife and child? As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone buzzed with a text from him. Asterisk, "I know you need space, and I'll respect that. But please know I'm devastated that I missed Lily's birth. I made a terrible mistake leaving you, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you both if you'll let me. I love you." Asterisk, I set the phone down without responding. Words were easy. Matthew had always been good with words. But actions, those told the truth about a person's priorities, and his actions had spoken volumes. Lily's soft cries from the nursery pulled me from my thoughts. As I went to her, I realized that for the first time in months, I wasn't wondering what Matthew, or worse, his mother, would think about my parenting choices. There was freedom in that, alongside the pain. Whatever happened next, whatever decisions I made about our future, I would make them based on what was best for Lily and for me. Not for Matthew, not for his parents, just for us. The family core that should have been his priority all along. The days that followed settled into a rhythm defined by Lily's needs rather than clock time. Feed, change, sleep when she slept. Repeat, Liv stayed with us, fielding visitors and phone calls, running interference when Eleanor and Richard tried to visit. There at the door again, Live reported on New Year's Eve, peering through the front window blinds. Third time this week. "Tell them the same thing you told them yesterday," I said, not looking up from Lily's sleepy face as she nursed. "Not ready for visitors. They say they have a right to see their granddaughter." I laughed, a short, bitter sound that made Lily stir. Rights again. Everyone's so concerned about their rights, but no one was concerned about mine when I needed them. Liv gave a slightly more diplomatic version of my response, then returned, looking satisfied. "They're gone for now." Matthew, to his credit, had respected my request for space. He texted daily simple messages asking how we were, telling me he missed us, sending love. I read them all but rarely responded beyond brief updates about Lily. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to believe his promises to change, to try rebuilding what we'd had. But another part, a stronger part, remembered all too clearly how easily he'd abandoned us when we needed him most. Trust, once broken, was not easily repaired. Jenna arrived from Seattle on January 2nd, bringing a whirlwind of energy and no-nonsense support with her. "You look like hell," she announced after hugging me, her eyes assessing my unwashed hair and the dark circles under my eyes. "Go shower. I've got the baby." "Nice to see you too," I replied, but gratefully handed Lily over to her aunt. Shower, with hot water washing away days of exhaustion, I finally allowed myself to truly think about the future. Could I forgive Matthew? Did I want to? And if not, what did that mean for Lily, for our home, for the life we'd built together? By the time I emerged, Jenna had Lily happily settled in her arms and was talking to someone on speakerphone. "Matthew," I realized with a start. "Need to give her time," Jenna was saying. "You messed up monumentally, and while I believe you're sorry, that doesn't automatically fix things." "I know." Matthew's voice came through the speaker, subdued. "But it's been almost 2 weeks. I've only seen Lily once, for 10 minutes. Missing everything." "Yes, you are," Jenna agreed, her tone matter-of-fact rather than accusatory. "Just like Emma missed having her husband with her when she went into labor. Actions have consequences, Matt." I cleared my throat, making my presence known. Jenna looked up, unapologetic. "Emma's here now," she informed Matthew. "I'll let you two talk." She handed me the phone and took Lily into the nursery, closing the door behind her to give me privacy. "Emma." Matthew's voice sounded tentative, hopeful. "I'm here," I confirmed, sitting on the edge of the couch. "How are you? How's Lily?" "We're managing," I said. "Lily's gaining weight. Well, the doctor says she's perfect. I wish I could see her. See you both. The longing in his voice was palpable. I closed my eyes, suddenly tired of the distance between us. Not just the physical space, but the emotional chasm that had been growing for months before Lily's birth. You can come over tomorrow, I said finally. Around 2. Just you, not your parents. The relief in his voice was immediate. Thank you. I'll be there, I promise. After hanging up, I found Jenna in the nursery, humming softly to Lily as she rocked her. Sorry for answering his call, she said, though she didn't look remotely repentant. But someone had to start building a bridge and you're too exhausted to do it. I invited him over tomorrow, I admitted. I'm not sure if it's the right decision. Jenna considered this. Maybe there is no right decision, just choices and consequences. The question is, what do you want, Emma? Not for Lily, not for Matthew, but for yourself. I leaned against the doorframe, watching my sister rock my daughter. I want to stop feeling betrayed every time I look at him. I want to trust him again, but I don't know if I can. Then that's where you start, Jenna said simply. Tell him. That Matthew arrived exactly at 2 o'clock the next day, bearing flowers and a small wrapped package. He looked better than the last time I'd seen him, cleanly shaven, his clothes neat, though there was still a haunted quality to his eyes. Thank you for letting me come, he said, his voice thick with emotion as he handed me the flowers. Daisies. My favorite. Not the roses his mother would have chosen. I accepted them with a nod, leading him into the living room where Lily lay awake in her bassinet, her dark blue eyes growing more alert each day. Matthew approached slowly, as if afraid she might disappear. When he knelt beside the bassinet, his hands trembled as he reached out to touch her tiny fist. She's so beautiful, he whispered. She looks like you. She has your chin, I said, seeing it clearly in her small, determined profile. We sat in awkward silence for a few minutes, both watching Lily as she waved her arms and made the soft, cooing sounds that had become the soundtrack of my days. Can I hold her? Matthew asked finally. I nodded, showing him how to support her head as he lifted her carefully into his arms. The look on his face as he held his daughter for the first time truly held her. Not just the brief moment at the hospital was a complex mixture of awe, joy, and deep regret. I'm so sorry, Emma, he said, his eyes fixed on Lily's face. I know that doesn't begin to cover it, but I am. I should have been here. I should have never left. Why did you? I asked the question that had haunted me for weeks, finally spoken aloud. Really, Matthew? I go at all. Knowing I was so close to my due date. He was quiet for a long moment, gently rocking Lily. I've been asking myself that since I got your text that she was born, he admitted. The easy answer is that I didn't. Think you'd go into labor early? But the real answer? He took a deep breath. The real answer is that I was scared. Scared. I echoed, surprised. Of what? Of failing. His voice was barely audible. Of not being a good enough father. My dad, he always made everything seem so easy. Raising me, providing for the family. Knowing what to do in any situation. I was terrified I wouldn't measure up. So you ran to him instead of staying with me. He nodded, shame evident in his expression. It sounds stupid now. It was stupid. It's what being there in my childhood home. With them telling me everything would be fine, that I'd be a great father because I was their son. It was easier than facing the reality here. The reality that parenthood is scary for everyone, I asked. That neither of us knew what we were doing, but we were supposed to figure it out together. Yes. He looked up from Lily to meet my eyes directly. I failed you, Emma. I chose comfort over responsibility. I listened to my parents instead of my wife, and I'll regret that choice for the rest of my life. His honesty caught me off guard. I'd expected excuses, justifications, maybe even blame, not this raw admission of failure. Your mother called yesterday, I said after a moment. She wants to come see Lily. She said some things about how I was keeping her granddaughter from her, how I was being selfish. Matthew's expression hardened. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing." Jenna answered the phone. "She told your mother that respect isn't a right, it's earned. And that when she learned to respect me as Lily's mother, we could discuss visitation." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I bet Mom didn't like that." "No, she didn't." I paused, watching him closely. She called back an hour later asking to speak to you. She said you'd been staying with them since you left the hotel, that you understood how unfair I was being. Matthew's gaze dropped back to Lily, his posture tense. "I stayed with them for 2 nights after I couldn't get into the hospital to see you," he admitted. "But I moved back to the hotel after that. I haven't spoken to them since New Year's Eve." "What happened on New Year's Eve?" He sighed deeply. "They started talking about getting a lawyer, about grandparents' rights, about how we could make sure they got regular time with Lily regardless of what happened between you and me." I felt cold despite the warm room. I told them they were out of their minds if they thought I would let them take my daughter from her. Mother. That if they pursued it, they wouldn't just lose you. They'd lose me too. His voice wavered slightly. It got ugly after that. Mom cried, Dad shouted. I left. The admission stunned me. For years, I'd watched Matthew defer to his parents on everything, from which car to buy to where we spent holidays. That he'd stood up to them for me, for Lily, seemed almost unbelievable. "They've been trying to contact me ever since," he continued. "I've ignored them." Just like he stopped his meaning clear. Just like I had ignored him. Lily began to fuss, her little face scrunching up in preparation for a cry. Without thinking, I reached for her, and Matthew transferred her carefully into my arms. "She's probably hungry," I explained, settling on the couch to nurse her. Matthew watched us for a moment, then reached for the small package he'd brought. "I got this for her. For both of you, really." Inside was a delicate silver frame holding 2 photos side by side. On the left was a picture of me holding Lily the day she was born, one Live must have taken. On the right was empty space, waiting to be filled. I thought, he hoped. "Maybe we could take a picture today," Matthew said hesitantly, "the 3 of us together. Even if it's the only one we ever have." The implication was clear. He wasn't assuming forgiveness, wasn't expecting reconciliation. He was preparing for the possibility that our family might never exist as he'd imagined. As Lily nursed, I studied Matthew's face, seeing beyond the handsome features that had first attracted me to the man beneath. Flawed, yes, but perhaps not beyond redemption. "One picture," I agreed finally. "But Matthew, I don't know what happens next. I don't know if I can trust you again." He nodded, accepting this. "I understand. I just want a chance to prove myself, not just with words, but with actions. Whatever that looks like, however long it takes." After Lily finished nursing and was settled back in her bassinet, we took the photo. Matthew's arm hesitantly around. My shoulders, Lily cradled between us, our expressions cautious, but not without hope. Before he left, Matthew paused at the door. "I'd been thinking about what happened, about my parents and their influence on me. On us," he said. "I'm starting therapy next week. Okay, need to understand why I let them control so much of my life, why I couldn't set boundaries." It was another. Surprise! Matthew had always scoffed at therapy, calling it paying someone to tell you what you already know. "I think that's a good idea," I said carefully. "I'd like to see Lily again, if that's okay. Okay, maybe regularly, but on your terms." He hesitated. "And maybe when you're ready, we could talk about what you need from me to rebuild trust." I nodded, not committing to anything, but not refusing either. "I'll think about it." As I closed the door behind him, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first step toward it. The willingness to consider a path forward, whatever shape it might take. Winter gave way to spring, and with it came gradual changes, both in Lily and in my relationship with Matthew. He visited 3 times a week at first, always bringing small, thoughtful gifts. Never lavish, always meaningful. Books I'd mentioned wanting to read. My favorite takeout when he knew I'd had a rough night with Lily. A playlist of songs I loved that he'd compiled to help calm her during fussy periods. More importantly, he kept his word about therapy. Sometimes, he shared insights from his sessions, realizations about his codependent relationship with his parents, patterns of behavior he was working to change, boundaries he was learning to enforce. My therapist says I've been living my life to earn my parents' approval rather than to be happy, he told me during one of his visits in February. She asked when was the last time I made a major decision without consulting them first, and I couldn't answer. That sounds about right, I agreed, watching as he gently rocked Lily in his arms. The thing is, he continued, I never saw it as a problem because my dad did the same thing with his parents. It just seemed normal that family made decisions together, that the older generation had final say because of their wisdom and experience. He made air quotes with his free hand, its expression wry. And now, I see it was never about wisdom. It was about control. He looked down at Lily, now 3 months old and becoming more responsive every day. I don't want her growing up thinking she needs someone else's approval to live her life. Slowly, cautiously, we established a new normal. Matthew rented an apartment nearby, close enough to be available when needed, but giving me the space I'd requested. He took Lily for hours at a time, sending me pictures of their outings to the park or just quiet moments in his sparse new home. His parents remained a complicated issue. It made several attempts to see Lily, alternating between tearful pleas and veiled threats about legal action. Matthew had shut down the latter immediately, telling them bluntly that alienating Lily's mother was the surest way to ensure they never had a relationship with their granddaughter. They don't understand why I won't just fix things with you, he told me one evening in late March as we sat on opposite ends of the couch, Lily sleeping in her swing nearby. They think if I just apologized properly or bought you something expensive, you'd get over it and we'd move back in together. Is that what you think? I asked, testing the waters of a conversation we'd both been avoiding. He shook his head firmly. No, I know we can't go back to how things were. Too much has changed. He hesitated. But I hope someday we might find a way forward, whatever that looks like. Those kinds of conversations became more frequent as spring progressed, careful explorations of what we both wanted, what we feared, what we hoped might be possible. I returned to work part-time in April, with Matthew taking care of Lily during my office hours. It was a practical arrangement that benefited all of us. I kept my connection to a career I loved. Matthew built a stronger bond with his daughter. And Lily thrived under the attention of both parents. By May, when Lily was 5 months old and beginning to show her personality, stubborn like Matthew, observant like me, I realized something had shifted within me. The hurt was still there, a scar rather than an open wound, but alongside. It had grown something new, respect for the man Matthew was becoming. It kept every promise he'd made since that January afternoon. It never once pressured me about our relationship, focusing instead on being a good father to Lily and a supportive co-parent to me. He had maintained his boundaries with his parents despite their emotional manipulation, insisting they apologize to me before they could meet Lily. And perhaps most tellingly, he had begun making decisions about his career, his living situation, his relationships, without seeking approval from anyone but himself. On Mother's Day, he brought breakfast and flowers, but didn't stay, giving me space to enjoy my first such holiday with Lily. That evening, after putting her to bed, I found myself staring at my phone, his number on the screen. Can you come over? I asked when he answered. After Lily's asleep. There's something I want to talk about. He arrived 30 minutes later, concern evident on his face. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, I assured him, leading him to the living room where 2 glasses of wine waited on the coffee table. The first alcohol I'd had since before pregnancy. This feels serious, he said, accepting the glass I offered. I took a breath, organizing my thoughts. I've been thinking a lot about us, about what happened and what's happened since. He nodded, his expression guarded but hopeful. I don't think I can ever forget those days. I continued carefully. Being alone when Lily was born, feeling abandoned when I needed you most. That will always be part of our story. I know, he said softly. And I'll never stop being sorry for it. But, I said, meeting his eyes directly, I've also seen who you've become these past few months. How hard you've worked, not just to be in Lily's life, but to be a better person, a better father, a better man. His hand trembled slightly as he set down his wine glass. Emma, ... I'm not ready to jump back into what we had before, I interrupted. Gently. I don't think that's possible anyway. But I might be ready to start something new, something built on who we are now, not who we were then. The hope that bloomed in his eyes was tempered with caution. What does that mean? Exactly. It means I'd like to try dating you, I said, a small smile tugging at my lips despite the seriousness of the moment. Getting to know this new Matthew, seeing if there's a future for us that looks different from our past, but might be stronger for what we've been through. He was quiet for a long moment, emotions playing across his face too rapidly to identify. Then, softly, I'd like that very much. We talked late into the night, not about grand plans or promises, but about small things. Books we'd read recently, how Lily had nearly rolled over that morning, the architecture project I was considering taking on, his decision to open his own, law practice rather than returning to his father's firm. When he left just before midnight, he kissed me quickly, a gentle brush of lips that held more question than demand. Good night, Emma, he said, his voice warm. Thank you for giving us a chance. I watched him walk to his car, thinking about bridges burned and bridges rebuilt, about choices and consequences and second chances that had to be earned, not given. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. But others, I was beginning to believe, could be reconstructed different than before, perhaps stronger, built with knowledge gained from past mistakes. Whether ours would stand the test of time remained to be seen, but for the first time since that snowy Christmas Eve when everything had changed, I was willing to find out. The phone vibrated on the car seat beside me, again and again. 5 missed calls now. I stared at his name flashing on the screen as another contraction ripped through me, worse than the last. Outside, snow fell in thick flakes, coating the hospital parking lot in white silence. The dashboard clock read 10:20 p.m. The phone buzzed. Again, this time I picked it up, watching his frantic text messages pile up. Asterisk, where are you? Please answer me. I'm trying to get back. Asterisk, but this time my thumb didn't hover in indecision. This time I pressed the call button. Emma. Matthew's voice exploded through the speaker, frantic with worry. Where are you? Are you okay? In labor, I said calmly, breathing through the tail end of a contraction. At St. Mary's, I'm coming, said immediately. I'm already on the road. My parents tried to stop me, said it was too dangerous to drive in the storm, but I left anyway. I should have never gone in the first place. I should have. Matthew, I interrupted. Just drive safely. Your son isn't waiting for anyone this time, son. I could hear the wonder in his voice. Picture the smile spreading across his face. We're having a boy. Apparently your daughter wanted a brother for her 3rd birthday, I said, smiling despite the pain building again. Surprise! 2 years after that fateful Christmas, we were still learning, still growing, still working through challenges, both old and new. Matthew's parents had eventually apologized, not perfectly, not without reservation, but enough that we could begin building a carefully boundaried relationship. My career had flourished with the completion of the Riverside Cultural Center. Matthew's new law practice had grown steadily, focusing on family advocacy. And our marriage, not the same as before, but in many ways stronger. Built on hard-earned trust and respect, on choices made daily to put each other and our family first. On the understanding that love without action is just empty words. I'm coming, Emma. Matthew promised now, his voice steady and sure. I won't let you down, not again. Never again. I know, I said. And the miracle was that I did know. Not because he'd said it, but because he'd spent 2 years proving it day after day. Another contraction began building. Okay. I gripped the phone tighter. I'm going inside now, I told him. Liv's waiting at the entrance. I love you. Both of you. All three of you. We love you too, I replied. Hurry home to us. As I ended the call and pushed open the car door, stepping into the snow with one hand supporting my swollen belly, I thought about the different paths a life could take, how a single choice could lead to heartbreak or healing, how some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes, while others could be rebuilt stronger than before. Matthew would make it to the hospital in time. Our son would be born with his father, holding my hand, Lily meeting her baby brother with wide-eyed wonder. Life would continue with its challenges and joys, its disappointments and triumphs. But in this moment, standing at the threshold between one chapter and the next, I was grateful for the broken road that had led us here. Okay. Not back to where we started, but somewhere new. Somewhere hard won and therefore infinitely more precious.